and welcome to We Are Definitely Wizards. My name's Richard. I shall be your host for today, or tomorrow, or in the future, or in the past. For after all, we can walk through space, and we can walk through time, because we are magical people. Now, joining me tonight, I have a scholar of sorts, a person who has studied lots, who has looked into the ancient scrolls, and he has come out with a doctorate. It is the one and the only Dr. Tom Lovewell, and he is from Redwell Games, and he is here to talk about this rather fantastic, amazing game, which is all about wizards and spellcasting, which is called KaZing, which is coming to Kickstarter at the end of this month, the month of October, just before the witching hour. Isn't that right, Dr. Tom?
That's right. It's coming out in time for All Hallows Eve.
There you go.
When all the witches, wizards, and ghosties and ghoulies come out, and I go hide and cry in the corner.
Which is why this is a wizarding special. Just for you. I was gonna go against the grain, but I thought we might as well embrace it because we are coming.
Embrace the spellcasting and the wands and everything.
Yeah, don't push your luck.
Okay.
Now, the reason that we do this is because we're past episode 200. It's our boldly going on with our ongoing mission to seek out the best in guests and to bring them to your door. And because you deserve it and we like you very, very, very much. Yes, you sitting there listening just now, you're awesome. And the other reason that we do this is because I met Tom at Tabletop Scotland, and we were gonna have a little chat, and then he was so busy at his stand in his booth that we ended up basically sharing a packet of crisps and a tin of juice over a table and having a little chat, and then talking about having a chat now. Isn't that right?
Yes,
it is.
That's right. Well, you did speak to Sally, who was on the store next to me, who's a friend who also helped develop the game. So, someone glamorous to talk to instead.
Is that you, or is that Sally?
Certainly Sally. She's far more glamorous than I am. She doesn't wear silly Hawaiian shirts and wizard's hats like I do.
I just think there should be a law against that, to be perfectly honest. But that's beside my prejudices and obviously my dislike for those who wear hats and are late. What we like to do is we like to find out a little bit about everybody's past that comes on the show. So do you want to tell us a little bit about maybe how you got into the hobby in the first place?
Well, back in the day, so sort of mid-early 90s, I picked up Space Marine, so the little epic scale Warhammer 40,000, and that progressed into diving straight into 40k, and so myself and my brother used to play a lot of that. We'd played sort of the typical board games of Monopoly with family, but also Ghost Castle and all of that bit. But I got hooked by miniatures games, and so have been dabbling, with the odd exception here and there, in miniatures games or other things since then. So I've played for 40k, went into Warhammer for a bit, moved to War Machine, and also went to Flames of War. But then about 8-9 years ago, a bit more than that, probably 9-10, I started with Tor Gaming. They had early stages of Relics. So when I was doing my PhD at the latter stages, I helped them with the playtesting and development of a tabletop board game. And so that sort of really helped me grasp not only the fact that I enjoyed playing not only miniatures games, but also role-playing games and other things, but I actually got a hand on the game development, developing rules and things. And so from that point, I started helping and sending Gavin, who was running Tor Gaming, ideas for different factions, how to do the rules and things. And some of it he listened to me, and most of it he sensibly edited out. But that took me sort of in the realms of, I quite like actually designing games as well as playing them. So
going back to your original kind of miniatures roots, were you a type of person that had like shelves and shelves with, obviously with your brother being involved as well? Did you have quite a healthy collection?
I had a healthy collection for then. I think with the way that 40k going from 2nd edition to now 8th edition, I think I had a sensible 1,500 points back in the day, which is now probably more like 600 points of Imperial Guard. So, but yes, I got the Chimera when it first came out, and I had all the different plastic Cassachans and Valhallans and things. And my brother collected Eldar, and so we sort of both had sort of fights on dining room tables and things, but also had some friends that played, and that's when Necromunda came out, and also Gorkamorka, and so we dabbled in sort of with Gorkamorka with the orcs a bit, but it was mainly we each had a faction, and it kept it sort of to a sensible size, not shelves and shelves and shelves. That waited until I was in my 30s.
How many did you have then compared to how many you have now?
I'm a hoarder. So with the exception of selling my dwarves for Warhammer, I've still got everything else. So I still got my 1,500 points of Imperial Guard.
How many is that? How many is 1,500 points?
So there's a few Leman Russ, a Basilisk, a Griffin, some Chimeras, and about 120, 140 models.
That's what I'm talking about.
But that's just the 40k. I've also got pretty much every single Relics model that came out, because that's what I got for helping develop. I've got some Kador for War Machine when I played that. I've got Flames of War. I had an American armoured company. So I've got those kicking around. I'm currently playing Malifaux. So I've got a couple of crews for that, and I mainly play Guild, but I dabble occasionally with Outcasts, and I also play Warhammer Underworlds a bit, and I'm going to be good and not call it Shadespire, but everyone else still will. So,
was that controversial?
Well, it was always called Warhammer Underworlds, but everyone called it Shadespire because it's simpler, and now that Nightvault's out, I think Games Workshop will want to call it Warhammer Underworlds, but everyone's just going to go, no, it's the next Shadespire event, because that's just what we remember.
Yeah.
I'm a simpleton at heart.
So how many figures do you have now? Would you say, is it hundreds? Is it thousands?
Yes. No, not thousands. I'd be in too much trouble with the missus. But definitely hundreds. In different locations. So some aren't played with anymore, so I don't play the 40k anymore. But yeah, I've got a healthy collection of things. So, but I'm rubbish at painting, and it takes me ages. So I've got a few things that are, yes, I've got a fully painted army, and other things which are, well, it's got a spray paint of one base colour, so that'll do.
Right.
And a couple of bits are, this is the Silver Horde. But for when I play tournaments with Malifaux, I've tried to use as many of the painted models that I've got. So I do have a painted crew and things like that. So it's not all entirely nude as the day is born. But for Warhammer Underworld, they've just come out, they've snapped them and just go, they're green for the orcs. Sorry, Aurochs, that'll do. The skeletons are white, that'll do. Yeah. I'm just not going to paint them because, I'm not a painter, I'm a player.
You do get a lot of people that I'm amazed, I'm constantly amazed about the level of detail that you get on some of these miniatures, that people have obviously put the time into actually playing or painting them. And I'm a lot into art. But I can't imagine me actually sitting down and being able to do something like that to the level of detail that they get.
Well, I can't. I know what my skill sets are.
Yes.
I make sure that there's colours on them, so for my opponent, particularly at competitions, they've got something to play against. But I am never going to be a good artist. I am never, ever going to win anything for Best Painted Model. But as long as it's got colour on it, that's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
I know what my skill sets are.
Exactly. It's like, why is that one white and grey and black? Because somebody told me to put a wash in it. It's like, it's meant to be a very, very light thing, a wash. It's not meant, it's called a wash. it's not called a bath or a drowning, kind of thing. So,
well, I don't know. I've got some of the icy bods. I've forgotten the name for the Vatir race of relics, and they're really good because it could just they're white and then a wash and then a highlight. It's like that actually doesn't look too bobbins, so I'll go with that. That's quite nice. But yeah, other things are just maybe it had a bit of a swim, kind of. It did a width of the paint pot, but at least there's colour on it. At least it's not part of the Silver Horde. That's my view.
I remember I did paint my Hero Quest originally, because I've owned Hero Quest twice. I had the Advanced Hero Quest and then had the original Hero Quest, and I painted the original Hero Quest, and I painted one of each. So I painted obviously the gargoyle. I painted the barbarian with his broadsword. I painted him. I did the elf. I did the dwarf. I did the wizard. Obviously, something happened to the wizard. I don't know.
What about the Firmir?
Yes, I did. In fact, what I did with the Firmir is I customised them, and there was, because I got a set of other orcs, because I think I bought Advanced Hero Quest, and there was a group of orcs, and then I went and bought another team of orcs, and I had like a spare arm, so I think I stuck it on the back of the Femir and had this third arm coming out of its back with like some huge sword kind of dangling underneath. It wasn't a Tyranid arm, because I would have remembered, because I had the Advanced Space Crusade with the Tyranids in it, and they were that was, talk about Games Workshop kind of dropping you in gently from a massive height when it came to kind of like creating the models. It was just ridiculous. But I painted at least one, I think. My barbarian looked like he was wearing... Do you know what? My barbarian looked like he'd gone to one of those piers at the seaside, and somebody had played a trick by smearing the eyepiece with kind of black shoe polish or something like that, because he looked like he had huge cartoon anime type eyes. So just
I give up on painting eyes on mine. I'm just not that good. It's like, look, they've got a skin tone, they've got a face wash, that'll do. So exactly. I play Lady Justice quite a lot for Malifaux, and she's got a blindfold, so it's brilliant. Don't have to bother about painting eyes. I just paint. It's like she's got a blindfold. So fantastic.
I know. And then you see other people and they've got like the magnifying glass out, and it's like, what are you doing? I'm doing the eyelashes. It's like, what? And they've got like this single brush that's as small as you could ever get, and they're like, dink, dink, dink. I'm actually doing see in the book. I'm actually doing writing in the book. It's like, oh my word. And if you zoom in far enough, you can actually see that it is actually writing that they've done, and not just symbols to make themselves look clever. And so it's just showing off.
I'd be sunk. I have typical doctor's handwriting. It looks like a spider has dived into a pot of ink and tap danced across the page. It's, my normal quick handwriting is bobbing. So to try to paint handwriting in a book that is anyway legible, it's like that. The only thing I could paint eyelashes on is that new big Cthulhu from Death May Die thing that's the size of a baby, and that's the only thing I've got a chance of doing eyelashes on.
Exactly. I couldn't paint eyelashes on myself, let alone a model, to be perfectly honest. I'd still end up looking like Widow Twanky. It would not be a good time, to be perfectly. It would be awful. But when you were doing the playtesting, I mean, is there stuff that's in the game that you could look back and say, yeah, I did that. I was involved in that. I mean, that's really unusual for you to be so involved at a process.
Yeah, well, I got developers credit in the version 1 and version 1.1 rulebook, and there's effectively at least one profile, so one unit for each race that I dreamt up. So for Vatir, there's the Evocator, which was one of the sort of low-level commanders, and that was kind of for my creation. I also helped with other bits where there was some artwork or some concept art and to help suggest rules for them. So there's bits where I had ideas and I just went, right, here's some ideas, Gavin, posted them off, sent them off to him, and he either kept them, modified them, or binned them, and bits changed completely. So I came up with an idea for a watchtower for the Rid-End race, and that's turned into a kind of a chicken dragon type creature with a tower on the back, and that's the only thing that stayed in there. But the concept of that unit I came up with, Gavin just went, well, I like the concept, but how the rules work now, completely ditch that and do something sensible. But I think it helped because that provided for Gavin ideas for different things that he could take from, rather than it always being just one person. There was someone to bounce off. So I just like the playtesting process, really.
Yeah, it's very easy to run dry if you're just kind of going by yourself as well, if you're trying to come up with ideas, because you can end up thinking, I'm going to try and do something completely different, but I kind of know this works, so if we try and do a variation of that, and then it just ends up just kind of looking like a kind of variation. I mean, with that kind of early development, I guess, success under your belt, was it then difficult to just kind of be kind of playing games and not wanting to kind of mod them or make changes to them or come up with your own kind of variations of stuff?
I'm quite happy to play games without modding them, and it's mainly due to the people I play games with that they just want to play according to the rules, and I'm very happy to stick with the rules because that's kind of what you need to do in a research lab. You need to know to follow. You've got to follow the instructions, otherwise the experiment's going to fall on its backside. So you've got to learn to follow the instructions at points, and I'm quite happy with that. But I'm still dabbling by designing.
I always like this Bunsen burner with a cigarette kind of thing. And you're like, no, it's fine. No, I'm just calling me crazy.
We still break things. It's planned breaking things. That's the difference. It's never, I'll just see what happens ad hoc. It's like, no, I'm intentionally going to break it. That's what science is. Engineers build things, scientists break things.
just to see what makes it tick, I guess.
Well, it is. That's generally the principle of, if I take this out of where it normally is and put it into something else, so effectively breaking something else, we'll see how it works. Or if I do something to X and then see what happens to the system, we'll experience it. So in some way, shape or form, either the thing that you're testing gets broken or the thing that you're testing it in is broken because you've added something weird to it. So something along the way gets broken if you're doing science.
Okay.
So, but no, I didn't have a problem with modding games. I just kind of went and designed my own. Yeah. So, and that's what I've been doing.
Do you get kind of quite analytical then when you're going into the design process? With obviously your profession, your job, your training. I mean, are you likely to kind of analyse things from different angles? Or are you the type of person that says, well, if I try and approach this from several different ways, there's a potentiality that kind of one of them is going to work for me?
It's a two-step process kind of thing. So the first concept is I have an idea for something. So with KaZing, I had an idea and I just chucked the cards together and went, right, let's see what happens. So I put a load of different movements, put them onto cards, and had a couple of games with them in very raw form with some friends to go, does the concept actually work? And it seemed to be. And then I went, right, okay, now let's actually have a look at the cards, look at the movements and think about them. So the first step was just a very raw concept, thrash it out, and then there was that analysis where, generally speaking, each card has got a movement and a position, and with a couple of movements accepted, you can't do your movement from that position. So it was it was analysed. There's definitely some analysis in there, but similarly, first time out, it's just, let's just chuck the ideas down and see whether the principle works. Yeah. And then fine tune it, and then go back to playtesting, and then fine tuning. So there is an element of analysis, but it's never analysis without observation as well. So, and I'm a great believer of making sure that you playtest enough, which is why it's taken 2 and a bit years before I've got to this point, because I've wanted to make sure that the mechanics work, and I've had enough time to look at different people playing it and getting feedback and things.
With like, say, when you were playtesting KaZing,
yeah,
and see compared to kind of other bigger games out there, where they seem to kind of not have the kind of the rule book kind of down, they're still working on stuff and things like that. Do you feel there's a bit more of a pressure for you to kind of produce the fully fledged, fully finished article over, say, maybe a Steamforged or a CMON of this world, where the rules kind of don't come out until maybe halfway through the campaign, or they're always kind of getting changed, or here, have a look at this and tell us what you think, kind of thing?
Well, I wanted to make sure the rules were at as good a level to start off with.
Yeah.
But with KaZing, there's going to be additions, because I took the view, it's like a pack of cards, that you've got these cards, you can go and play games X, Y, and Z with them, but actually you can come and think of a different way. So I'm sure there are different game modes, I've called them, I think, in the rules of, there's 3 different ways from the pack that I've thought of that you can play the game. But actually there's more than that. I've got ideas for expansions with that. The other day I had an idea of changing it a little bit, making it a bit more fun, kind of like a dance mode, for want of a better description, kind of game. So there's going to be additions of, well, actually there are different ways you can play it, but the core movement of the wand movements from the cards, that will stay the same. But there will be additions to it, because I think it can be added to. But I wanted to make sure that the 3 core game modes were sorted, that it worked at the different difficulty levels for different age groups and things. That was all at least fairly solid, and critically people could pick up the rulebook and go, I know how to play it, rather than go pick up the rulebook and go, I think I know how to play it, but I'm just going to reread it in about 3 times to understand. And my first iteration of the rules, I gave them to people, and people went, it looks very nice, but how do I play? And I think the current iteration, people are able to pick it up without me around to explain. And I wanted that, and that's why I've been holding off for the last sort of 6 months before wanting to release it, because I knew I wanted the game where people could pick up the rules and play it, rather than go, I've got to pick up the rules a second or third time.
Is that a difficult thing to achieve when you've been so close to kind of like developing a game and playtesting a game and almost kind of controlling the environment in which that game is played? Is it difficult to kind of put it into a place where I can actually, I can take this deck, I can take it out, I've got the rules in front of me, and I can go ahead and just start playing straight away without you kind of rocking up at my door and saying, well, look, put these cards here, put those cards here, and away you go, kind of thing?
I think it is a tricky element, insofar as you've got to go and ask people, and generally people are nice and go, yes, I will do it. But it requires asking things of people, and the difficulty I've had was people that I was developing and playtesting with, I can't use them to blind playtest, so you've got to go elsewhere to get that feedback on a rule book. And so you've got to approach people that you may not have approached before, and kind of get a wider group of people for this blind playtesting. And so I'm really grateful to people now that I've got the rules to a better iteration, to have taken it blind and give me feedback. But the advantage from the science point of view is I've had to write research papers, I've had to write my thesis and then have a viva. I'm used to people giving me feedback that I've never met before, and I'm quite happy with that. That's a very useful skill the science has given me, is I'm quite happy to take feedback from people. I know it's part of the learning process. I know it's part of making it better. I'm just it's that difficult element of kind of sending an email to people or catching them at conventions saying, would you mind taking a look at my game, please? And I'm not always the most outgoing of people, so that's the bit that's the hardest part, I think, is finding extra people to help you outside of your normal crowd.
Is that also the same then with the marketing? side of things as well. I mean, is that part and parcel, being able to actually reach out to people and say, hey, I've got this thing, would you like to have a chat about it, or, would you like to find out some more?
Very much so. It's I kind of generated our first game, Vote Me, partly because I didn't want to just jump in there with KaZing and sort of show to people, I've got a game, I think it's brilliant, I think you will too, without anything to show for it. So I kind of launched on Vote Me first as sort of a smaller kind of game, a party game, which it is relatively inoffensive. It's a bit of fun, it's a lot of improv, but I could learn the ropes as well. And also I felt that when I got onto KaZing, I could say to people, look, I know what I'm doing, I've got something, we're substance to us, because it's not just one game, or it's not just two games, there's others. I wanted to feel that we've got a portfolio as Redwell Games, rather than just, I've got an idea for a great game, and that's it. I wanted there to feel like some substance. That was, that's just been my approach, really.
Okay. So how, I mean, you said that KaZing has obviously been in production for 2.5 years. Yeah. But, I mean, you mentioned other games there as well. So, I mean, what's the other games that you've been kind of developing? And how did they come along in the journey? I mean, what happened to you 2.5 years ago to make you sit down and go, actually, do you know what? And you kind of clap your hands and rub them in glee and say, right, okay, let's actually start getting something developed.
Well, when I was helping with Tour Gaming, we spitballed some ideas, some things with dragons and other bits, and so I've actually just discovered, going through all my clutter, as I said earlier, I'm a hoarder. I discovered an idea I put together back then, but I started generating something kind of based on some of the relics things, and then I looked at the game and went, well, I've got 120 cards for one player and a similar for the others, and all these dice, and I just went, I think it'd be a good game, but that's just going to be a complete pain to playtest and things. So I've still got that design that I could revisit at some point, but I went, I need something simpler. And so I went from that and kind of used the fact that it was a bit magical based and went, well, let's go for something a bit more simpler. And for anyone who was around in the 90s may have played Magic Carpet by Bullfrog games on the computer, and that's all about movements of arms to create, you move the mouse, and if it's a perfect circle, that'd be a perfect fireball kind of thing. But my son has watched Tree Food Tom, and that has a lot of movements to send the magic to the character, and those kind of things kind of percolated in my brain, and that's how KaZing was born. And that had the advantage of, well, actually, there's 4 suits, but there's only 18 cards per suit, so it's a relatively speaking compact game at the basic level. I then added extra cards for the advanced level of difficulty, so that there's a bit more, but it's the same kind of principle, and it was a lot easier to develop. But so that's kind of how it came to being, and then since then there's been ideas for other things. The Vote Me was a bit more improv, but that comes from, again, being in science and having to present at conferences and having master's students where they need to present their research, and you get students in a room and they don't want to talk.
Yeah.
But you need to present your data. So it was born from that element of, well, actually some kind of game to promote people being vocal. And that's why it's relatively speaking easy to develop that one, because all it asks people to do is talk. The rules are fairly simple of you vote for whoever you think's best, and didn't take as much time to develop. So that's why that came out before KaZing, because it balanced itself naturally, because people are just talking and they self-regulate how it's balanced, because people can vote for whoever they think's best, and it's all personal preference. So no hard rules were needed, really. And then I've got Six Gun Showdown that is currently in development, because KaZing was getting near to the end. It was just tidying up the rules. It was like, well, let's get something else out that keeps my mind interested in the development side of things. And that's going through a lot more number crunching playtesting to make sure the different characters are balanced. So, but my wife is very good, because she keeps me in line, and when I've got new ideas, she says, no, focus on the ones that you've got. So there's been a few other things that I've kind of scribbled in my ideas notebook, things that I could follow up on, but they're kind of held back until other things are further along.
Was it, I mean, when you did vote me,
Yeah.
I mean, that was earlier on this year.
Yes.
That you did that.
Yeah.
I mean, was that kind of a daunting time to put something out on Kickstarter based on kind of like the behemoth that Kickstarter seems to have become? You know, I mean,
yes.
basically this year, you know.
It was always intended to be me learning how to use Kickstarter, and unfortunately the first release coincided when I got reviewers' comments back to a paper. So last year, I think sort of September time, submitted one of my research papers, and I'd kind of forgotten about it, and then I was gearing up for Kickstarter at the beginning of the year and got the reviewers' comments back, and you've got a month to respond, and I'm going, but I had a deadline of, I wanted to get things through onto Kickstarter and sort it out so that I could put an order in with the printers to have something to take with me to UK Games Expo. That was always my aim. But it ended up being, as Redwell Games, a small release, just so I could learn how to do Kickstarter, all the different bits of putting a page together, getting a printer sorted out, logistics and all of that, because I'd never done it before. And it was a case of, it doesn't need to be huge. It just needs to be something that I can learn from. And it did that brilliantly.
Yeah.
And people have found it and they've enjoyed the game. Because basically it just involves talking for 15 minutes about all kinds of rubbish.
But you're right. I mean, it funded. I mean, it did what a lot of much more ambitious Kickstarters have failed to do. I mean, there's a lot of companies out there that are running Kickstarters with the same project for the second time now, for the third time now, because the first time now, for whatever reason, it didn't get the traction. It wasn't in the current zeitgeist, or the gods of Kickstarter decided not to smile on it for whatever reason. You know, it doesn't.
Yeah.
I'm more and more perplexed by games that fund immediately, games that just don't seem to get kind of any kind of traction at all. But I mean, you had a very, very modest target, which was like £600.
Yeah, well, in all honesty, because I knew the levels were low, and because my circumstances also had changed. So I'd been working for the University of Sheffield, and my grant had come to an end. And so at that point, what happens is you get made redundant. As I've been working at the university for a number of years, I actually got redundancy pay. Mm-hmm. So actually a big bulk of the payment for the print run was redundancy pay. I'm now working in Sheffield in science still, doing different things, but I've now got a permanent contract. I don't have to chase grants as well, and I don't have to write research papers, which also helps with the games development. Means I've got more time. I don't have to come home and be writing the science. But I just went, I can do something smaller because I've got this redundancy pay from working at the university for so long, grant coming to an end and just being made redundant because there's no more grant. So it was, I'm learning on this one. I'll use most of that. I'll just get a little bit, just push it over the edge. Job done. And it was so that I could say to people, I've learned, I've spoken to printers, I've got all that sorted. I know what I'm doing now. I'm not going to go, give me all your money, please, thank you. And you can trust me because I say so. I want to be able to say to people, you can trust me now because I've done it once. I've gone through the principle. I know how to get a game to printers and back and out to people.
Did you get it printed in the UK?
I got it printed in Germany.
Oh, right, okay.
So, but I'm looking at printers in the UK, but potentially could go back to the guys in Germany as well, as they did a good job. So,
yeah.
But keeping it fairly local. And obviously with the interesting political climate and Brexit, everyone's going, but I think the aim is to get things sorted before that's going to have a real issue this year.
Yeah, it's kind of, I mean, I don't know. It's like how do you get political and non-political on a podcast? We've tried to stay away from the kind of the politics, but I am particularly interested in seeing. There's a lot of kind of companies running Kickstarters just now, and I'm thinking you're going to be fulfilling after March, and I'm just interested to see kind of what kind of potential plans they maybe have for, I mean, let's face it, if they're going to be fulfilling into the UK, or if they're using like, say, was it Happy Shopper in Germany, fulfilling, and usually those they've fulfilled, I think it was Founders of Gloomhaven and Root, so they fulfilled that from Germany into the UK, and also you've obviously got Games Quest as well, who are fulfilling from the UK into Europe as well. So we're interested to see kind of potentially what kind of might happen there, and what kind of plans people have put into place to kind of cover that off. Investigations are required, sir.
Well, I think the big difficulty is at the moment, you could say, I'll look into it, but the reality is the politicians don't know what's going to happen yet. So I kind of view Brexit Day, whether sensibly or foolishly, as we know what's going to happen on the 29th of March.
Yes.
And because there's the transition period, I reckon that you're going to get to Brexit Day, we know what's going to happen, and during that transition period, we'll be moving towards this is how it's going to be, because you're not going to go,
no.
I wake up on the 30th of March and everything's in place.
Everything is sorted. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, because bureaucracy doesn't work that quick.
No,
You're lucky if things happen within about a week, can't you? So,
well, I saw, was it Cesar from Alley Cat Games talking about his shipment for Dice Hospital being kind of put through customs, and he's had to. It's been held up at customs. He's had to pay for the storage while it's been held up at customs and investigated, and while they kind of do the inspection and they do all the checks, and he says, well, it's potentially could have wrecked kind of Essen for them, which was going to be something that's just going to be kind of mega important to the business, in terms of, he was saying, well, it's a disaster, because if they don't get them out quick enough, then it means they don't get to Essen. If they don't get to Essen, there's backers that would like to, I guess, pick the game up, but there's also a large retail opportunity for people to actually purchase the game, at Essen as well. So, it's like, in some ways, the custom stuff just now can be a nightmare if you get caught in it. So it's just interesting to see what the potential ramifications could be kind of in the kind of the future, which is why why I was interested in kind of where you were potentially getting kind of things kind of printed.
Well, this is why I'm looking at the UK as one option, but the guys in Germany, it was approximately 10-week turnaround time. So as long as things are sorted by first or second week in January, which they're getting to be that case, I've got most of the cards sorted. It's just the current version of the artwork. The background's going to change from the one wizard I've used as a prototype for the last year. I've got the guy who did the different artwork. People have seen the Six Gun Showdown characters. He's rejigging the backgrounds. So I've got 2 witches, 2 wizards for the artwork. So all that's going to happen is the old wizard's going to come out, the new bods are going to go in, and I've got the cards sorted. So I'm pretty sure that I'll be able to have files to the printers by early January. So even if it's in Germany, that's fine, because I know that they've been able to do a turnaround time to get things back to the UK before Brexit Day anyway. And that helps, because they did that for me this year. So I know I can rely on them.
Yeah, as I say, it's an interesting topic, and it's going to be interesting to see kind of what happens for kind of going forward.
It's going to be very squeaky bum in March and April, isn't it?
I can't even. As I've said many times before, I work with businesses that work on that sell on Amazon, and it's there's a whole thing I can go into about even kind of people kind of trying to trademarks at the moment don't even know what's happening with the trademarks, because a lot of people have like the European trademark to cover the UK and the whole of Europe, and they're not aware if after that date the trademark is going to be applicable still. If they're going to have to if there's going to be a lot of people that are going to have to reapply for the trademark based on the rules. They're hoping the grandfather rights will kick in, but it's again, there's not been an official confirmation, which is very, very strange.
Yes.
You know, very, very strange indeed. But anyway, I didn't mean to jump into that. KaZing.
Yes, KaZing.
Games full of wizards.
Yep.
I am obviously I'm having a drink as we speak because here's to the wizards, and it's the only way I can get through this show, if I'm being perfectly honest, if we're going to be talking wizards and magic and pogs.
There's
pogs,
also witches
pogs,
as
Tom.
well.
No pogs, Tom.
I promise not to say anything about that subject.
Except obviously on Twitter.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I'm allowed to say Tazos, though. I supported you with the Tazos.
You did support me with the Tazos, and I appreciate it. I think me and Emma are going to be having words about these pogs very, very soon. I think if she comes back on the show, we're going to be pushing aside Quirk to one side, and we're going to be having a little chat about her attitude to pogs. And but don't think I didn't forget the terraforming Mars comment, Tom. But
I didn't say that. That wasn't me.
That was somebody else, wasn't it?
Because I remember your discussion at Tabletop Scotland, but I've never played Terraforming Mars, so I don't know about its quality. I think I would have ranted about something different, however.
Yeah.
So
there you go.
Actually, I think there's about 3 or 4 things I could have quite happily ranted about, but now's not the time.
Like I am the professional angry man shouts at cloud. I mean, you can give me and I could rant about clouds or angry men shouting at clouds if the kind of the need kind of took me.
Damn you, cumulonimbus!
Exactly. Get out of my face, Stratus. Anyway, but KaZing, it's a deity simple card game with levels of gameplay that you can get involved in.
Yep.
With the idea being that when a wizard casts or a witch casts a spell, they will move their wand in certain ways in order to make that spell kind of happen. And essentially, the more flicks of your wand that you manage, then the more points you will score. Is that correct in principle, Doctor?
Yes and no, because there's 3 ways to play.
Mm-hmm.
So for one of them, definitely so. The longer the spell, the more points you get, and that's kind of a bit like the version, cards where you go, right, I've cast my spell, I get this number of points. You get through the deck, whoever's got the most points wins. And I've called that loosely is the thaumaturgy mode of play. But there's the dual version where it's a bit more like Magic the Gathering, where the witches and wizards have got a certain amount of health, and dependent on the complexity of the movement, that's how much power the spell's got. And if it's got a Kazam magic word, then you damage someone. If it's got a Zing, it heals you. So there's 2 different ways of playing using the same set of cards. And then there's the third way where it's a bit like a clock version where you're collecting the different points. So if you think of a 3x3 grid, it's basically you've got a person there with their head at the top, which I've called position 2, feet at the bottom, position 8, and you've just got the different places where you can reach your arm. So if you stand up, you put your right arm up in the air, that's position 1.
Yeah.
You move it all the way to the left, that's position 3, and it's all about this space that you could put your wand or your staff into, and that's what it's trying to symbolise.
Yeah.
And the difficulty of the movement card determines how much power you've got. So some are very easy, can be played anywhere. So a full circle can be pretty much played in any position, and so therefore that only scores 1 point of power. Yes. But some specific diagonal movements, there's only 4 places you can actually start at to then finish, and so that gives you more power. But the different modes of play mean you're looking for different cards. A circle's a brilliant card if you're playing the Thaumaturgy version, because it's really easy to get a longer spell, but it's rubbish if you're trying to do damage to someone where you only get 1 point of power, whereas a diagonal gives you 4.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really affects how you look at the cards, depending on what mode of game you're playing. So, but the other thing, which is quite neat, is there's a difficulty mechanic. So I've had kids as young as 8 playing against their parents, and the kids have got the slightly easier version of the game, and they've had a competitive game against their parents or aunts and uncles. And so it's designed that way. Part of the inspiration was, I want to play with my son. I want to be able to have a game where he can play and have a competitive game, and I can play and have a competitive game. Whereas things like Scrabble or Lexicon or other things where, generally speaking, the older person has got the experience, has got the strategy or what have you, and so is either whooping the younger one or has got to sort of falsely play down their skill. And I wanted something where actually whoever's playing, whether adult with child or an experienced player with someone who's new to the game, everyone can have a challenging game.
No, I totally agree with you. And the reason for that is I've started regularly playing games with both my 5-year-old son and my 12-year-old son as well. And with my 5-year-old son, we were playing GKR Heavy Hitters, where if anybody knows that is a game full of cards, it's a game full of dice, it's a game full of tactics. And I was able to kind of strip it back just to play it into a simple, here's one weapon, this is your range, here's the other guys. You don't have to do deployment of the robots, you were just going out and kind of attacking each other and kind of wrecking buildings. So we did that with GKR, and he had a lot of fun. It means that later on, the next thing I can do is I can introduce kind of like the next rule. Whereas obviously with my 12-year-old, you can play games kind of really proper now, which is kind of cool. But there still can be some games which you maybe have to leave out certain rules just because of the level of complication that's kind of involved. And there's also other games that I still wouldn't kind of play. But then again, I mean, I played Root with him the other week with my 12-year-old boy, and he picked it up straight away, was able to play, was able to understand it, and kind of had a kind of a jolly good time. So you saying to me that I can be almost having an asymmetrical game with, either of them, and they'll both kind of understand it, and they'll also be on even footing with me, without me having to kind of dumb things down or take things out. That's really kind of interesting to me, to be honest.
Yeah, that's the principle, and it gets to the point of when everybody at that level is scoring, because it does get to a point of where everyone knows what they're doing, they're casting the spells, they're generally getting top end of the points, then you go, right, okay, now you've hit that, we'll now both all play at the medium level. And it just knocks it up that step so that people can feel like they're actually advancing through the game.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's still the top level of difficulty where you've got zigzag movements and V-shaped movements and other weird and wonderful things, so that there's still that step up that if people are going, right, we now feel like we've mastered this middle level, there's that top level of game, so that people who really do like gaming can go, well, actually, I've got something there to really get sink my teeth into and do really weird and wonderful things with. And you've got that as well, so...
Yeah. Has it given you, with it being a deck of cards, has it already given you kind of ideas for expansions? I take it,
Yes.
The ability to kind of have different spells is already kind of almost like a kind of a given, I guess.
Well, I have got ideas for expansion. So there's one that I've already play tested, which is the challenges, where people effectively have a spell book. So you've got a deck of cards, and those are sort of already written spells where you've got 5 prerequisites on there. And if you're playing at the basic level, you've got to score 3 of them, medium level 4, and top level 5. And so they've got things such as you've got to end at this position, or you've got to have this kind of direction of movement, or you've got to involve this kind of resonance on there. And I was playtesting that one and discovered that if you've been playing at medium level, which I had been doing, because all of us playtesting had played it enough times, we went, we'll jump in at the medium level. And then we went down to the easy level, and then we started struggling because we went, oh, actually, we're getting too used to looking at the 4 prerequisites.
Mm-hmm.
We could actually have scored this earlier just by going for the 3, but we'd lost it. We'd been playing too much at the medium level. So there's that's around, but I'm putting together the rules for a similar version, which is the quests, which is where you'd go through an imaginary area to collect either unicorns or dragons or collect mushrooms from a cave, and that's where it involves the mana mechanic. And so it has certain resonances required and a certain level of mana. So,
right, okay.
So again, but that's adding to this base game, and it's taking the principles, just doing something extra, but that requires a little bit more development for the quests, and I want to release them both together, so I've kind of held back a little bit on the challenges. But the quests are there in principle. I just need to go and playtest them sufficiently. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to see what the reception was as well to KaZing, to the base game.
Yeah.
But certainly, there's more things that you can be done with that set of cards. It's building blocks for casting spells rather than you've got it, that's it. It's done by. It's like, no, here is the game. Here are the first 3 ways to play. Here are the difficulty levels.
Yeah.
I've given you a stop point. But actually, you can change at the end of the rules. You can change the stop point if you want.
Yeah.
What you consider to be the game end. So I consider it a game, but also building blocks for other games, like your standard deck of cards.
Like a game system, basically.
Yeah. Well, you pick up the normal deck of cards, and you can play 7s with it, or you can play 21. Or you can play poker, or you can play bridge, but it's still using the same set of cards. And I consider that there are more things that can be done with the set of KaZing cards. I just haven't necessarily put my mind to them, and other people can put their mind to it.
Yeah. So is it going to be a case of seeing, opening it up to the community and seeing what they kind of come up with? Yeah.
Definitely. If Kickstarter goes well enough, I'll get people who actually know how to do websites to have a look at the Redwell Games website and make something nice and put together an area where people can add suggestions and create a resource. At the moment, I'm just having to curate it, and it's something new that I've not done before. So there's information on there, but it's not as beautiful as I'd like it to be. But, there's only so much one person can do at a time. So, in
terms of stretch goals,
yeah.
Because with Vote Me, it was like, okay, I want to get this made. Are you approaching KaZing with the same philosophy that let's see if we can get it made, or have you sat there and let's look at kind of stretch goals for this. Let's look at kind of what else we can add in terms of value to the game, depending on the level that we fund? Or are you just happy to just say, if I get the game made, brilliant, we can look at improving it kind of later on?
So in terms of stretch goals, there's going to be a sort of a point where things are happy. So I think probably something like second or third, there will be everyone's going to get a wand chucked in. But also, it's not just the fact of a wand because it's thematic, but also with the game, you can stand up and actually act out what you're doing. But it also works really nicely as whose turn it is, so you can just pass the wand around. So it's something that fits with the game. And so that's just going to be chucked in at a certain level. But we're going to just, as a lot of other people have done, make the game look nicer for those that have backed on Kickstarter. That's my aim for stretch goals. Because there's not much more I can add in. If it does phenomenally well, then I think I will chuck in the challenges, or at least a good chunk of these challenge cards. But I don't want to be sufficiently arrogant to think, oh yes, it'll definitely get to that. I just want it to be funded at the moment. And I've got the first few sorted out in my head, because if it does do nicely enough to get to some stretch goals, brilliant, I'll be over the moon. If it funds, I'll be happy. So, it's just going to be a case of a better game to start off with some extra things put in for people that have backed. And if it does phenomenally well, then yes, there's these challenges that I can go, actually, we'll put in another 20 or 30 odd cards and we'll include that into the game.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a nice challenge to be presented with. Yeah. To be in that situation where you're sitting there going, well, we have gone through our funding goal, and therefore I actually need to sit down and think of some additional stretch goals because we're funding kind of so well, which is, always a nice place to be in, if you have
exactly. And that was partly where I'd got the ideas from challenges a while back. It was just wanting to make sure that everything else was focused on. And again, as I said earlier, trying to focus on the key bit and the challenges I wanted to keep with the quests. So I kind of focused on them, and I haven't focused as much on the quests part yet. But I think that's a job for November and December and over the Christmas period, subjecting my brother and other family members of, right, now that you're confined to the house, I'm going to play test these editions with you.
Wow.
So
that's just, that could be considered potentially illegal in some countries, Tom, holding people against their will and making them play spellcasting games. I'm just saying. I'm not judging.
They love me. Or something.
I'm sure they write that in the cards that they send you.
Under duress.
Exactly.
I wonder why my sister lives on Australia, though.
She doesn't, because Australia doesn't exist. Haven't you seen the Flat Earth Society? It's all apparently a big fake. How much is it going to be to open the book of spells, to get your wand out and start playing about? What's the cost of entry?
So it's going to be about £16 on Kickstarter. The retail price will be about £18. And for the first sort of 5-6 days, it will be there'll be an early bird option for people. And like with Vote Me, if people buy lots, because there's a team battle mode, so if everyone's got a deck and there's a sort of co-op competitive version in a bundle, you'll get a reduced price as well. So there's going to be a number of different options for people, but about £16 is the cost of entry, which for a game that can take it anywhere and got different options is a pretty good bargain, I think.
It's nothing. It's absolutely nothing. Let's face it. If you went out and got yourself a takeaway, you'd probably spend 16 quid.
Oh, easy. Yeah.
Easily. Absolutely easily.
I think it's a round of drinks in some places, so...
It's probably about 2 drinks in Edinburgh. If you went up to the bar and got about 2 drinks, you could be potentially playing that, or maybe I'm exaggerating. It's been a while since I've been allowed out in the wild, Tom, if I'm being perfectly honest. And
that's the thing. It's a game that you can pick up a deck and you can play with up to 5 people. So in that respect, it's like, well, it's about £2.50 per person. So
absolutely bargain, absolute bargain. Look, like you can't even get into the cinema for like that amount of money. I went to the cinema at the weekend. It was 27 quid for 2 tickets.
Ouch.
Exactly. Stunning.
Well, I just go to the small person's Saturday morning, Sunday showings, so it's a little bit cheaper, but there's a few things that I'm kind of going, I'd really like to go to see those, but do I want to pay for a babysitter? Just wait till it comes on TV.
Exactly. It'll be on various streaming services within about 6 months anyway, so, why do I even bother? If people want to keep an eye on what you're up to, where do you exist on the interweb nets?
So I'm on Twitter at Redwell Games, and I talk about where I'm demoing at. Occasionally I bring up these things that begin with a P that I promised I wouldn't mention. And another bit, I exist on Facebook.
Say the word. Say the word.
Piggies.
There you go.
So... Or an anagram of Spog. So, but yes, on Twitter is where I'm most active. I post sort of longer things on Facebook, And we do have a website as well of redwellgames.com, but it's got extra things on there, but I'm a bit bobbins at updating it. You know, I'm a biochemist, not a web designer, so apologies.
Is that a Star Trek reference?
No, it's just the simple fact, as I said, I can't paint and I can't do websites, but I try my best at both.
Exactly.
So,
but I heard you got a fantastic singing voice, though, to be honest.
Yeah, it's nearly as good as my face for radio, so.
Oh my word. I've got one more question for you. Okay. Yep. You go to see the Grand Wizard. And the Grand Wizard, he says, "Hello, sir." He says, "You have been exceptionally helpful in spreading the word of magic and wizardry and all that good stuff. And I'd like to reward you. And I'd like to reward you with 3 board games of your choice." He says, "I can produce them from anywhere. You can have first editions, you can have second editions, you can have any kind of board game that you want. You just have to tell me, and I will get somebody to create them for you." Because he's all talk and no action, this wizard, he'll probably get somebody more capable to do it than himself. But what 3 board games would you ask that wizard to produce? And they can be anything you want.
So, I have got World of Smog on Her Majesty's Service, and I really like that game. So I'd want to have that one. So that's one which is in my collection, but I'd like that one anyway because I think it's nice.
Okay.
Then, does it have to be a board game? Can it be a miniatures game?
Yeah, of course it can be a miniatures game.
So yeah, I think I'd have to take X-Wing just because it's portable. And
is that the old X-Wing or the new X-Wing?
Currently it's only old X-Wing because I've not tried new X-Wing. So is it a bit like New Coke? And the third one, it's got to be photosynthesis because I've played that once and I've not got that one yet, and it's a nice sweet mechanic. So I was thinking about something like Gloomhaven or something else, but I don't think I've got people, or Twilight Imperium, but I don't have people that I can play that for hours with. So I think something.
No, they would make sure the wizard's got friends, and he would make sure there's tons of people to play. So if you want Gloomhaven or Twilight Imperium, you can. Yeah,
it'd have to be something. It would have to be one of those two. Something that you basically need to have unlimited time and unlimited space to be able to play, and I'd go for one of those because
which one?
I've looked at them and got.
Which one?
I'd go with Gloomhaven over Twilight Imperium, but
know which way your bread's buttered now, tell you.
Well, it's a hard decision. As I said, I've kind of looked at them from afar and gone, I'd like to, but A, finding the space, and B, finding the time. I just don't think I'd get, I like to play the games that I've got, and so, yeah, I've not gone down that road because I think they'd languish in a cupboard for too long, which I think's unfair in games. Until I've played the socks off them, and then I kind of leave them in the loft, like I've done with my 40k stuff.
Awesome. We'll take all the links that you give us, and we'll make sure they go in the show notes, so we have notes to show. If you want to find out what we're up to, what we're doing, things like that, go to Twitter, We're Not Wizards. Go to Facebook, We're Not Wizards. Go to YouTube, We're Not Wizards. Go to Instagram, We're Not Wizards. You can go to our blog, which is we'renotwizards.blogspot.com. In the next couple of weeks, there's going to be what we think of KaZing. Guess what? It's going to have one big 4-letter word. No, that's not true.
Sing.
Oh, it's sick. Ream. You can go to our website, which is we'renotwizards.com. You can email us, which is magic@we'renotwizards.com. You can find us on all the podcast catchers on Stitcher and Spreaker. We're on Spotify. We're potentially going to be on Deezer. I don't know if anyone's heard of Deezer. It's another music app, but apparently they were accepting people to ask and go onto their kind of players. So we've asked, and we'll see what happens. If you want to find us on the big bad fruit boy of the world, you can find us on Apple Podcasts. And as we say, if you like what you've listened to tonight, please drop us a subscription. Make sure you check out what's happening with Tom, Dr. Tom, and his wonderful game. But if you do like what you've listened to tonight, drop us a subscription and consider giving us a rating or a review. If you are going to be giving us a rating or a review, don't give us 10 stars, because it makes
Give
us
them a Roman numeral
big-headed.
kiss.
What?
Roman numeral kiss.
Yeah, pretty much. Don't give us that. Or don't give us 1, because it makes us cry. Give us a 5, because it's in the middle and it's average. And we are just a little bit average. But the person who's not been average tonight is the rather wonderful, the rather fantastic Dr. Tom Lovewell.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being on, sir. It's been an absolute pleasure and an absolute delight. There's only 3 more things that we have to do. The first thing... Oh, damn it, I can't ask this question. Right, okay, here we go. The first thing is to remember that we are many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, Tom?
Supposedly you're a sorcerer?
Supposedly I am. Definitely I'm hidden.
Maybe you're a mage?
Maybe I'm definitely a wizard. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what the funniest thing is, right? Stop.
Right.
Pause the podcast right now, yeah? Go and look at the Twitter profile. And then come back to the
Are you a zombie wizard king?
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
That's far more awesome. I think that means you're a necromancer, aren't you?
Pretty much.
Kind of an undead wizard.
Exactly. The second thing is that, do you like swords, Tom?
Yes.
Do you
Everyone likes swords.
Do you like making swords, Tom? Do you like crafting swords, Tom?
I would certainly have a stab at swordcraft.
You would certainly have a stab at it, because basically we had a gentleman on a while ago called Adam from Adam's Apple Games, and Adam went on to kickstart successfully the game called Sword Crafters, and he's kindly said, would one of the listeners like a copy for themselves? And Sword Crafters is basically, it's a 3D build an actual sword out of cards, and it looks cool.
That sounds awesome. Beyond
it does.
belief.
It is awesome. It's absolutely awesome. But what we're saying is that if you want to win a copy of Sword Crafters, then what to do is to send us a picture of yourself. Drop it in the DMs if you're a bit shy on Twitter, or if you're going to go, put it into Twitter, and we use the hashtag I'm a sword crafter, not a wizard. And what we'll do is when we get enough in, me and Adam are going to check over them, and we're going to pick a winner, and we're going to send you a copy, because it's very, very fantastic. So, and we'll make sure that competition gets spread far and wide.
Everyone should enter, because it will be awesome.
And you can put a picture. It doesn't have to be an actual proper sword. It can be a sword made of anything. We want people crafting swords out of all types of things. Make out of like door frames and puppies or car bits, make out of trees, anything at all. Spaghetti. I mean, whatever takes your fancy. Just make us a cake that's a sword. Whatever you want to do. But just remember to add the hashtag, and maybe you could get your own copy of Sword Crafters very, very soon indeed. And the last thing is to say goodbye. So it's a goodbye from Tom. Say goodbye, Tom.
Goodbye, Tom.
There you go. Every single time. It's almost like I tell you to do it. It's almost like it's unscripted. It's ridiculous.
I'm a performing monkey.
You're not a performing monkey. You're many things, but you're not a performing monkey.
True.
That's the name of our next podcast. We're Not Monkeys. And it's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe, roll6s.com. And at the end of the month, when the moon is fat and All Saints' Day comes lurking round the corner at us, where the veil between magic and reality becomes so thin that maybe you can reach through Move your hands in a circle, move your hands in a Z, move your hands in all different manners of things, and you might not have a swish, you might just have a KaZing instead. But until the next time, goodbye. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
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 Is it secret? Is it safe? Bye.
A wizard is never late. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.